Welcome to our next module. This is module 6.5, planning for the highest level of performance. Now, there are a few things that go on when we start to think about planning for the highest level of performance. The first is mindset. It's about getting into a mindset, a winner's mindset, that you think actually, regardless of what else is happening, regardless of what might be impacting, the business, the marketplace, I am going to win and I'm going to achieve my target. And that really is a mindset challenge for all of us. And I encourage you to start to really push your boundaries and your own personal limits and beliefs on what you think is capable for you in your business. The second then is about actually physically planning. I think about my early days in sales, and I was basically instructed to do a certain amount of work. You'll do this number of visits per day. You'll see this number of customers. And I always thought those numbers were arbitrary. And to a certain degree, they were, but the numbers, when I followed them, I followed the plan, to do, let's say, my first sales role was 12 sales calls a day, 12 customer calls a day. Some of those were speculative visits. Some of those were planned and booked visits, but it was a combination of 12 per day on the average over a week. So it was quite an intense role and a lot of physical calling on customers. Now, partly the reason for the 12 was because the business understood that of their high performers within that business, the people that were doing best were calling on about 12 customers a day. They also had territories that had a certain number of customers in them, and they knew that if you called 12 times a day and you were on a 4 to 6 week cycle, you could cover the territory fairly effectively. So there were a couple of reasons that that was going on. Not that I realized that at the time. I was just told, do 12 calls a day, see customers between 4 and 6 weeks. Now, what I've done since then is really start to think more strategically about how to correlate the sales activities with our targets. So that brings us to this module. Let me just share my slide. So planning for the highest level of performance. Now, I like to think as logically as possible about these things. So let me introduce you to the tool. The tool is in our toolkit. It will be under the Sales Target Planner tool. And you'll see here that what happens with this tool is there are a couple of things worth mentioning. The first is that we have two types of cells in this document. The first cell is a green cell, and that's an input cell. So you put a number in there. And the other cell is like an orangey type color, and that's a calculation cell. So when you've put a number into the green cell, the orange cells will automatically calculate. So in the first instance, you might update, this planning tool with your name and your role and responsibility. Then you put in the number that is your annual target. Once you've put in your annual target, it will then automatically break it down into a monthly target. So you see in the example here, it's £1,000,000. That's £83,333 per month. And then a weekly target, which is 19,231 per month. We exclude all holidays and things like that. This is straight division of 52 weeks and 12 months in a year. So 19,000, just over 19,000 a week. Then what we input is the average product price. So in this instance, we've put a product price of, say, £20,000. Now, it may be that as you're thinking about this in relation to your business, you might say, well, my product price is lower than that, but customers buy more. So you might say, if I'm talking about annual target, I might say it's an average product price for a customer over the course of a year. So you might say an account that buys this product would buy about this amount per year. So that's the number that you would plug in there. So in this instance, we're going to use £20,000 as a fairly round number. What that now is going to tell us is how many unit sales are needed per month at £20,000 to hit our target. Basically, what it says is if we get 4.17, let's round it, let's say 4.2 unit sales per month, that will enable us to hit our target at £20,000. The next number that we then put in is the sales conversion rate. So how many customers do I need to see before I get a conversion to closed won? And if we said the average sales conversion rate is 33% in this instance, now, in my experience of working with businesses, it's somewhere between 20 and 40%. So you should have a sense for that, but you could look through your CRM data and get the exact number. Somewhere between 20 and 40. We're being generous here. We're saying 33%. What that tells us is that the sales pipeline needed, because we have to generate now opportunities of average product price at 20,000. What's the average sales pipeline needed every month in order for us to meet our commitments and sales? What that's telling us is that we need to generate £252,000 per month in order to be able to generate sufficient sales, 4.2 sales at £20,000 to meet our target. And then the final number that we plug in is the number of meetings required to close win, to win that business. So we've got conversion rate, now we've got number of meetings required. And here we've said 5 meetings. So we're saying we're going to have 5 types of meetings. Now, that doesn't mean face-to-face meetings, but it might mean, early introduction, might mean then a face-to-face meeting, might mean a follow-up meeting on Teams or Zoom or a phone call. And then it might mean another meeting just to get commitment, and then perhaps a final one to make sure that you get implementation and usage. So you've got 5 meetings to meet that £20,000 target for that customer. So then once we know that the number of meetings required is 5, then what the tool tells us is, okay, so how many meetings are needed per month in order for us to generate that amount of opportunity, win those amount of customers and hit our target? And it's saying 21 meetings per month. So all of a sudden we start to have a really clear view on what's required for us to meet our responsibilities and our target. But we want to go one step further than that. I remember having a conversation with a sales director of mine very early on in my career, probably around the year 2000. It's about 25, 26 years ago now. And what he and I talked about was that high performers, winners, don't aim for 100%. Winners aim for 120%. And the name of this module is high performance, planning for the highest performance possible. And if you look at the chart on the left, based on hitting an annual target of £1 million, what we should be doing, if you've got a target of £1 million, you should be aiming for 1.2 million. Now look at the difference that makes to your key metrics. Instead of 83,000 a month, we're looking at 100,000 a month. Instead of 19,000 a month, we're looking at 23,000 a month. And then instead of 4.1 sales needed per month, we're at 5. So all of a sudden, everything shifts by, as you would expect, 20%. If our sales conversion rate remains the same, instead of £250,000 a month, we need 303,000 a month. And then instead of 21 meetings a month, we need 25. So we should always be thinking, what do I need to do to generate that next level of performance? I don't want to meet the target that I've been given. I want to meet the target that I set for myself. As soon as I understood that, as a salesperson, as a sales manager, as a business manager, now as a self-employed business coach, when I understand that I'm not aiming for the number that someone else tells me or an arbitrary number, I'm aiming for the number that I decide I want to hit myself. There's huge liberation in that and huge opportunity to hit the very highest levels of performance for you. I hope that's really useful for you. Use the tool, plug in your numbers, give yourself that 20% stretch. And I look forward to hearing about how you get on using this tool and the approach to engage your customers and accelerate growth in our next workshop. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next module.